Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshops, where we get together in the middle of the week and learn more about technology. Our first presentation today is an excellent one. I think that's why we have so many people here for our two different presentations. Sue Mueller is going to be here, and I kind of consider Sue as our encyclopedia of genealogy. And anything you want to know about genealogy, the book is the book of Sue. And she's been with us before and given some excellent presentations. And today she's going to do a very unique one, and she's going to be talking about DNA for genealogy. So Sue, I'm going to turn things over to you and share what you know.
Okay. I couldn't get on my laptop for some reason, so my desktop here doesn't have a camera, so you can't see me, but I'm not really essential to the presentation. So okay. Just in case you were curious, I always like to start with a little bit of humor there about DNA. I'm going to talk about what it is, not too technical, why you might want to test. Some people do it for health information. I'm going to tell you how you can do that a little bit cheaper, because for those of you who know me, I am the queen of cheap. Because I'm a genealogist, I want you to have a family tree when you do your DNA, and that can be a bare bones with names and dates and place names. Your DNA actually cannot tell you your ethnicity, but it can get fairly accurate based on their databases. And you can upload your results to other sites, sometimes for a fee and sometimes for free. So here's a little technical thing. The Y chromosome, male chromosome, is passed on from father to son. The mitochondrial is passed on through daughters, but everything else recombines in different ways, which means that you and your brother may show up as one being more Irish than the other. It's not because you had different fathers, it's just because of the way the DNA combines. So you get half, we're talking about, most of these tests are autosomal, which means you get half from your mother and half from your father. And they recombine in every generation, and every person only inherits half of his or her parents' DNA, and those parents in turn have only inherited half of their parents. So half is lost with every half of the parents' DNA, which is not inherited. And that's why you don't look like twins with your siblings. I mention what these tests, how these tests are done, just because sometimes it's difficult for older people to get enough spit for a test, although you don't have to do the spit all at once, and you don't want to do it after you eat. But family tree DNA and MyHeritage are both cheek swabs, which may be easier for older people, although their databases are much smaller than the other two. So what do the tests do? They analyze markers on your DNA, and then they connect their results to their own database of other tested individuals. And some of the sites are interested in genealogy and some not. But why would you want to do this? Well, some people like to do it just for fun. They want to find out how much Irish they have, or they may be adopted and they want to find their biological family. They may be looking for new avenues of genealogical research. They may have a hypothesis that they want to confirm or blow up. And it's possible that they'll get nothing that helps them, but as the databases grow and more people test, then no result will become increasingly uncommon. And you're likely to connect. A lot of people do it for race, and as I mentioned before, or ethnicity is done by their own database, so it doesn't show up like race does in your DNA. I will mention that my dog is in a dog aging study, and she's a standard poodle. And they sent me a DNA test and said, would I do a DNA test on my dog? So I did, and guess what? She's 90.9% poodle, almost 100% chance that she'd be curly and brown. Well, I could have told them all of that by looking at her, unlike people. If you want to get genetic genealogy information, this is probably the best place to get it because it's not aligned with any of these sites. When you start searching for genetic DNA, everybody wants to get your money and they focus on their own testing. So this is the best place for a variety of things. They compare the testing companies' charts. They have educational sessions, and it's a relatively new organization, but the whole thing about knowing about DNA is relatively new. So how can you get the most from what your test does? Well, I know that we have a lot of computer geeks here, so you want to download your results, and then you're going to open it and look at it. Well, guess what? It's going to be meaningless to you. It's going to be just numbers and letters that you're not going to understand anything. But you do want to download it, and then you can upload it to other sites and the more sites that you have your DNA on, the more likely you're going to get results. And I want you to connect it to a family tree, and in that tree you need to have parent names and dates and also locations. This helps people who are adopted trying to get where there's a connection between two people that they're trying to figure out who the parents are. Ancestry, however, they have the biggest database, but they don't permit any other tests to be uploaded to their own site. In other words, you have to buy an Ancestry kit to have it uploaded to the Ancestry site. The other sites you can upload an Ancestry kit to. Sometimes there's a fee. At different times, they have had free times when you can upload to the site, and there is one site that is totally free to upload at all times, and that's GEDMATCH. They all use a little bit different analysis methods, and they have different databases. So the more places, the more fishes, the more ponds you can fish in, the more likely you're going to come up with some results. If you're using software, or you're using Ancestry, or you have your tree on a site, they generally have the ability for you to download the names, dates, notes into a file, which is called a GEDCOM, and all that is the Universal Talking Mad system for genealogical software. I mentioned GEDMATCH before. That's the site best known for finding the killer, California Sunshine Killer, through DNA matches. You want only people who are biologically related to you, so you don't need to branch out and have brothers and sisters. And this will help you make contacts with family members, solve genealogical mysteries, or maybe create more mysteries for you. The good things that you can find, well, if you think illegitimacy is good, I guess that's a good thing, but you can find an actual biological father or mother. You can find where there's mistakes in your tree because of an unknown father that you previously thought you knew who the father was. You can follow, sometimes, particularly ethnic families where names have been changed, you can connect those families together. Immigration puzzles can be solved. But and all of the testing companies have a disclosure on there that says if you find out something that you didn't want to find out, it's not their fault, and that they take no responsibility for that. So it can change your view and what you thought about family history, particularly when a parent is completely changed. It may reveal family secrets. There was a time when kids were not told that they were adopted. Or of course there could be other ways besides adoption that you have a misattributed father. You may have unexpected relationships, and you find out things that you really didn't want to know, or you thought you didn't want to know. I mentioned about a cheaper way to get health information. The testers that provide health information are all basically using this Prometheus site, which happens to be owned by MyHeritage. MyHeritage and Ancestry pretty much own the bulk of a lot of the genealogical things. They're going to provide you articles and information about things that are in your DNA. And that's all that it is. Now, 23andMe has expanded that, and they have cutesy things on there, like the chances of your having dimples or blue eyes or that kind of thing. But Prometheus, you can upload your DNA to Prometheus. It costs $12. And they don't keep the report online very long. They used to only keep it 30 days. Now they're keeping it 45 days. So once you get your report, which is pretty much fairly quickly after you upload your DNA, download the report, because it's not going to stay online, and they do not sell your data or your DNA. But basically it's a literature retrieval system, and as I mentioned before, it's used by 23andMe, it's used by Ancestry, Family Tree DNA, other sites, and biomedical researchers and healthcare professionals. So it's not a fly-by-night thing. It's been around for a long time. They do not store your DNA. They do not share it or sell it. And if you thought that nobody was selling your DNA after you do a test, I hate to tell you this. The testing companies are selling the data. They're not attaching it to any identifying information, but they should actually be paying us, because they're making money. Not only are we buying the kits, but then they're selling the data too. There are more than 50 DNA testing kit services. The big ones for genealogical purposes are Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, and Ancestry. 23andMe is their focus really is on health information. And before you decide to purchase a kit or use a kit, check the privacy settings, make sure you're comfortable with what you want to reveal or what you want to have released. There are people that worry that law enforcement, for one, is going to use your DNA information against you. Well, the way I feel is, if somebody in my family has committed a crime and is running free, and my DNA helps catch him or her, I'm all for it. So I don't have a problem with that. Yes, employers, insurance companies, that day is probably coming, not in our lifetime, but Big Brother is watching. I mentioned before, law enforcement has already used consumer genealogy DNA databases to solve crimes. In fact, this latest, the killing in Idaho, that they got DNA close to their suspect from one of those sites, and then they collected from his garbage DNA to match it. So we are becoming more sophisticated in our crime solving ability, and DNA is one of those tools that they are going to continue to use. So, but there can be consequences beyond, your uploading. There can be arrests of guilty relatives, possibly identify innocent people, but that's less likely. But investigators may interview suspects and contact relatives for more information. So, the whole family may know. There may be fewer and fewer secrets. Because my focus is on genealogy, I want you to connect your information to a biological tree. Even if you're not working in software and you're just going to write down names, what you want to do is have the names. The surnames obviously are the most important, but the dates that the person lived and died, and then the place name is also important. And Ancestry has refined their ability to figure out which side of your family your matches are on. They divide. It's in beta right now, but it's pretty refined. They have a DNA for parent 1 and parent 2. All you have to do is figure out which is mom and which is dad. And in my family, that was fairly easy because my mother had German in her and my dad did not. So the side with the German was my mom's side. And then as soon as I labeled those mother and father, then they went through the databases of all my matches and they could pretty much tell whether it was paternal or maternal side. And they marked them. There are a few that they don't have matches for. There are a couple that match on both sides, and I have taken my tree back far enough that I actually have some common people in both family trees. I have my mother and father in separate trees. They're not close relatives, but they do interconnect. Both my parents were from Pennsylvania, but not near each other. One was from central Pennsylvania, and the other was from Armstrong County, which is closer to Pittsburgh. So if a person has a tree, you may easily be able to find the common ancestor. And if there is a common ancestor, at least on the Ancestry, I'm most familiar with Ancestry's DNA. I've just sent my heritage and 23andMe, and I haven't gotten those back, so I haven't really worked with those sites yet. But you work with your shared matches. I've been contacted several times by people that were looking to find an adoption, or even I was contacted by one man who's found out that his birth was as a result of a sperm donor back about 30 years ago. So I've mentioned this before. If you test with more than one company, or you put your DNA raw results on more than one site, then you're more likely to get a match. If everybody would upload their data to GEDMATCH, then they'd all interconnect, but most people aren't as interested in genealogy when they do that. That's why it's frustrating for those of us who are interested in genealogy when we try to contact a match. Sometimes we don't hear back from them. My favorite story is a woman that had a tree with 4 people in it, and she was a fairly close match. And one of the people in her tree was my great-grandmother's brother. So obviously I knew what the connection was. And I sent her an email, and 4 years later, I heard back from her son. So don't give up if you try to contact somebody. It can happen. I will tell you, though, if you're looking for matches, people that tend to skip over the matches if there's no surnames or no family tree, because they think, well, that person isn't going to be able to help me at all. So that's why I encourage you to have a family tree. And I don't know, I told you I was the queen of cheap, but don't get hung up on, oh, I don't want to pay for something I already bought. go ahead and test with multiple companies, but wait till they're on sale. They just had a nice sale at Christmas time, which of course is over, but around Mother's Day and Father's Day, they have sales. So watch for that to save you money. And, you know, if you were looking for job hunting, a new job, and you were putting your resume in multiple websites, well, that's like having more DNA database sites too for you. So how do they tell who's a close match and who's not? It's measured by something called centimorgans, and I'm not going to go into exactly what that is, but it's basically a way to measure genetic distance. And the higher the number of centimorgans, then the closer the match. And there is a site, which I've referenced on the handout, called DNA Painter, which has a chart which will tell you the most, based on the number of centimorgans, the most likely way that person is related. Now, I will tell you that oftentimes that's correct, but there are some times when I know the exact relationship of a relative or a DNA match, and it's one of the lower, the less likely ones. So it's not a guarantee that it's the relationship is one of the higher ones. It may be one of the lower ones. And in general, they say you should have about 30 centimorgans matched to have a single recent common ancestor. Obviously, the lower the number of centimorgans, the further back in your family that match occurs. So these are my matches from Ancestry, and the first one there is, she is a first cousin, and I labeled these people that I know, I labeled exactly what they are. So you can see my first cousin there has over 1,000 centimorgans, and then my first cousin once removed, who is the son of my first cousin, his match is just a little under 400. This person has no tree. I have not contacted her. Ancestry says it's on my father's side. And this gal I'm in contact with, and you know, I know who she is and I know what the relationship is. So you do, and sometimes people can help you out with your family history, and sometimes they're not, you know, they're really not interested in genealogy. They just were doing it for fun. So I mentioned DNA Painter to figure out, they have one of the best charts. There are other places that have charts which suggest what the relationship is, but this one's easy. You put in the number, the chart pops up. You can look at, you know, depending on how far you're into this, you can see what segments in what chromosomes you actually match, which pieces of DNA. They have all kinds of things. And I know you're going to be shocked. They have a subscription service where you can take advantage of their special tools. But there are some tools on their site that are free that you can use. So here's, I punched in 324 for the centimorgans, and there's their suggestions, what pops up. GEDMATCH is a third-party site. They don't sell DNA test kits, but you can upload anybody's DNA test kit to their site. But actually not a lot of people have done that. I'm going to show you in a few more slides how big the sites are, and this is really one of the smaller ones. And they have things to sell. They have special tools to sell, but there are tools on there that you can use for free. But it is nice in that any DNA can be uploaded to this site. So anybody who has a tree is more likely to have genealogy interest. They have some free tools and some subscription tools. And as I mentioned before, that was one of the first ones that the crime that was in the news for solving a crime. A friend of mine was contacted by the police to ask her if she would do a DNA test because they had a body that was found in 2011. It was a cold case they were working on. And they asked her if she'd be willing to do one if they sent it to her. And they sent her the family tree DNA, which is smaller than the other sites. So I was intrigued by, but I know that site has more analysis tools than any of the other tools. You can do beyond autosomal, and that may be why they sent her that kit. By the way, they haven't solved the mystery yet. So the popular ones are autosomal. If you're interested in joining a DNA project, ladies, they don't want your DNA for those projects. They're surname sites and they're looking for Y chromosomes. But if you have a brother and you can get him to test, then you could put his results there. The cost, I think I paid back to 2013 when I got my first DNA test. I think I paid $49 for it. It's like $100 now. But wait for sales. I think around Christmas time, Ancestry was $59, and My Heritage was only $36. And I know I can't remember what 23andMe was for sale. Maybe $79. That one runs a little higher than the other ones. So when you're thinking about which kit do I want to buy, then I'll just tell you a little bit about some of the bigger sites. The Family Tree DNA, if they're the only ones that offer mitochondrial as well as Y DNA, and so advanced researchers would be interested in using that. They have very limited genealogy function. My Heritage and Ancestry are your bigger genealogy sites, so you're more likely to be able to match if you're looking for an unknown father, mother. That's probably your best site. 23andMe has the health results, and then they do cutesy things to make you want to buy that package. I just mentioned Living DNA because that's sold in the United Kingdom, and that has the largest United Kingdom database there. So why am I giving you numbers from 2018? I'm going to give you more recent numbers, but these numbers are definitely accurate as of those dates. So you can see that 23andMe is about half the size of Ancestry, and then My Heritage and Family Tree DNA are much smaller. These other numbers I'm not positive on, so I'm just gonna tell you. I got this from a place called DNA Geek, and this is based on the number of kits that are sold. That doesn't mean that people have turned them back in. And how long do you have to wait for results? About 50 days for Ancestry, and the time is longer around holidays when they've had a sale, because obviously they have more kits. And 23andMe says they have 12 million, or they've sold 12 million, and My Heritage 4.5 million. They did not release how long it takes. I would say, you're talking somewhere between 30 and 50 days. And the same thing with Family Tree DNA. So you notice they're not growing geometrically like some of the other sites are. I will tell you that when you post your DNA on multiple sites, the results are not going to be the same. And that is because they are using their own database to determine for instance, how much Irish or German or whatever you have in you. And the databases are different. So the larger the database, the closer to accurate it's going to be. But if you are a unique background and there's not a lot of people like you in the database, your results are less likely to be as accurate. And obviously the connections, who you're going to be able to connect to, are going to be different in each database. So depending on what you're looking for, you may want to explore more than one site. They are continually upgrading their results. And when I first had my DNA tested, I had no German in me. And I am now up to 28%. So that meant more people came into the database and they had DNA similar to mine and they had German background, and they figured out that I must have some German in me. So the race they can determine with accuracy, and possibly the continent, but the ethnicity range may be large. They're constantly changing and refining, and with Ancestry, they will say, we have new results. Do you want to upgrade or update your DNA? So they don't do it while you're not watching, so that you're well aware that there's been some changes in your results. And then you click on it and they show you what they found. So for analysis tools, who has what? For my heritage and ancestry, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a family tree there, but they're more likely to have a family tree there. And sometimes people have a family tree and they don't have themselves in it, or they've not pointed out who they are in the tree. You can limit by location also in Ancestry and MyHeritage. Family tree DNA does have a place where you can put surnames that are in your family, and genetics, they all offer something about that. So and I'm going to talk a little bit about Ancestry because I said right now that's what I know the most about, and they do have the biggest database. They you can have a little pie chart that shows you how much of various ethnicities are in, and I told you they do parent 1 and parent 2, and they divide that up too, so that if your parents aren't too much alike, you may be able to figure which is which. Or when you see a match on one side that you know that's from your father's side, then you can figure out which is your father and which is your mother. And they've gone through your matches, and they will place the match on the appropriate side if they can figure it out. There's a few in mine, and I have thousands of matches. There's a few that they can't figure out where they match, and they're so low a match that I'm not going to be working on them unless I would be contacted with somebody who was trying to solve a puzzle, because I love a puzzle. I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. Time and place are very important. So dates and place names are important. That will help you identify the common ancestor. But if you have many lines from the same place, and people did tend to marry people who were like them or like themselves, then they may be difficult to distinguish. Now, if you share DNA, you're related, but it's possible that you and distant cousins may not share any DNA, that you don't show up as matches. That doesn't mean you're not a match or that they're not in your family, because of the way that DNA combines, and you're only getting half, and each generation you're losing something. So your cousins are still your cousins, but you may not know that from DNA alone. I'm going to mention this research study, and I did put this on the handout too. This is a huge, huge study. They're still under 1 million, but their goal is to have more than 1 million people from the United States. Their belief is that medicine, one size doesn't fit all, and I think we'd be in agreement with that. And they believe by knowing more about your DNA, your environment, your lifestyle, that they could actually tailor your medical needs to better medical practices. So there's no fee, obviously, to join this. They do a blood draw. I don't think there was a cheek swab, but gradually they are sending some interesting health things to participants, and you can opt out of getting that information if you don't want to know. But this is actually a medical genetics test that they do, not your test that the genealogy companies are doing. So if you're interested in participating, just go online and see if there's a site near you, that you could sign up. So far, I can't remember when I signed up. It's a couple of years ago. I've only had to do that one visit. I've had things to fill out over the years, but nothing else that I had to show up for. But there is a site here in Erie. In Pennsylvania, Pitt is in charge. But I don't know other sites. Okay, that's it for me.
And I have 2 questions in the chat box.
Okay, I can do questions.
You got time for that right now?
Yep.
All right, I have the family tree DNA. How do I download the kit results?
Okay, there is a little video that there's a link on the handout that they'll be getting that explains how to do it from each site. So yeah, you're going to download it's a zip file, and then it's yours forever.
Are these the same methods used on PBS Finding Your Roots show?
Some of them are using, they're using the DNA to match. I've read some interesting books where, there was most recent one I read was about a man who was raised in an Irish family. Obviously, he thought he was Irish, and the whole family was tall, and he was very short. And it took many years for the woman to figure it out, but her grandfather had been switched at birth, and they connected with the other family, and there was this big tall guy that was raised with this Jewish family that didn't look anything like them. But all their lives they were raised what they were raised.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. We thank you, and we'll see you shortly.
Okay, yep, I'll go off to my meeting and I'll be back.
We sent you a direct message too, but I'll just ask Sue. I have my tree on Ancestry, but I can't get a nice printout of it. It looks like a really nice diagram. So what program is better? I've heard Legacy, and I know there's other ones. I was just wondering what your opinion was.
Well, Legacy works. If you were a MyHeritage subscriber, I would recommend Legacy, but with Ancestry, I would recommend Family Tree Maker. And that way, you can sync with what's on Ancestry. In other words, you can pull that tree and all the files you have attached onto your own computer. If you stop subscribing to Ancestry, you lose access to all of those documents. But if you've got it on your computer in the software, then you'll always have it.
Okay, so Family Tree Maker.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I have several DNA hints from Ancestry as first cousin hints. but I cannot see how they are related based on their limited tree. What is strange for me is that I am sure I know all of my first and second cousins. When I contact the name provided by Ancestry, I barely get a response.
Yeah, you know, those people that have made an account, but they're not really interested in genealogy, and you know, I would just try sending them, you know, another message and say you're anxious to see how you connect. Sometimes I can figure it out just by looking at their limited tree, you know, go back a couple generations and I get a surname and then I can, you know, figure it out. But, you know, it's possible that somebody, one of your relatives was making whoopee and there's cousins you don't know.
Many years ago, many years ago, one of my sons-in-law received a message from somebody from some service, and he had come up as a relative. And the question was he interested in getting in communication with each other? And my son-in-law said no, wasn't interested in any way, shape, or form. And so for that person, that was a dead end, just like he mentioned for you. With limited funds, what Ancestry DNA kits would you purchase in what order?
Or Ancestry, you mean, I would do Ancestry first because they have the biggest database. And then you can, MyHeritage does occasionally have free times when you can upload your DNA to their site, as does 23andMe. So, you know, you'll get limited. They're always trying to sell you something. You know, you'll be limited, but Ancestry has the largest database, so I'm a big proponent of Ancestry.